So, Goran, I would say the floor is yours. You have people here in the room, but you also have people via the live stream. So you're all around the world now. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Willem. And thank you everyone for coming here to listen to this. It's a great opportunity for me and for the FEI headquarters that I'm giving, I would say, a massive time slot of almost 90 minutes to speak about veterinary matters. I will not speak for 90 minutes. I hope that you will all contribute with a lot of questions, discussions, good items, but because I'm not just here to inform you about things, I'm also here to listen to you and take on messages. We've done that before and we will continue to do that we then, depending on the issue and so on, we can either put it into education, we can clarify, or even into the regulations. It has happened before and it will happen again. So during this presentation, I will be doing item by item. An item could be 1, 2, 3 slides, something like that. And after each item, I will ask you if you have any comments, questions, and so on. And I would really appreciate if you can be a part of this and be really interactive. We will all learn more from that. Questions before I start? No? Everyone's happy. All right. I will have a brutal exam afterwards that you haven't heard of before. No, just kidding. So the veterinary regulations and the veterinary department's focus areas for 2020. We start with the regulations. So I'm first going to go into prohibited methods. Very short one on the inspection panel. Pony measuring, quite a lot more actually. And then biosecurity. That actually ties much more into also stable security, stable safety, contamination than many people actually realize. These two matters are very closely linked, especially in regards of the activities that we do. So it's a win-win situation. If we solve one of them, the other one will benefit. So, prohibited methods. I start out with an old favorite, clipping. And in 2019, we introduced stop to clip horses at FEI event venues. This was fairly well received, but there were also issues with them, especially on the tours where horses will stay for weeks and weeks. They need to clip the horses to be able to wash them properly, to get silicates, oils, etc. that would be in the footing. It was just a matter of hygiene for the horses and welfare. So, further to the fact that horses can be clipped for veterinary purpose after an approval by either vet commission or the veterinary delegate. It's also allowed, while staying on a venue or going there before, to clip, not shave, to clip the horse up to 3 days before the period of the event. And they can then use a blade that is cutting no shorter than 2 millimeters. We will publish a list with pictures on such blades, so you know what to look for. And we will also publish lists on those that are not allowed, that are actually clipping much, much shorter. The blades that are used for pre-surgical clipping, for example, they clip much shorter than 2 millimeters. But the combination of time and length of clipping capacity, we hope that this will work. We've been trying so hard to find a solution that will enable the grooms to clip the horses without the risk of them shaving, clipping so close that it would have impact on the sensitivity of the horse legs. And also a question that we get fairly often is that how high up on the legs can you clip the horse? And up to the carpus or the front, the knee on the front legs, and up to the hooks on the hind legs. If they, that's what's banned. That's what they cannot do. So this applies to that. If they clip the neck, the back on the horse, and so on, perfectly fine. They may do that at the event as much as they've done previous years. That's not an issue. It's the legs we're after, the lower limbs. And also, what happens if someone violates this? If you find someone actually clipping on the venue without in violation with these rules, it's a disqualification and nothing else but a disqualification. There's no fines, there's no delay or anything. It's disqualification, and it's disqualification of the events that's coming, the one that is close up. If you wait another week, let's say they're in Oliva now, they're going to be there for 6 or 7 weeks, and you find that this happened on the Thursday of this ongoing event, and then you have a new event starting 1 week later. They can go to that week later event. That's fine, but they cannot. They are disqualified from the one ongoing. Any questions on that? Yes. Microphone, please.
No, just get it to them.
How about if someone clipped the ear, those fur close the ears?
That is, within the FAI regulations, that is not prohibited. But in some countries, you would have national legislation prohibiting that clipping inside ears, clipping the sensitive hairs around the muscle and the nostrils. I personally think that's a good idea because some horses can get really stressed, especially around this part. And if you clip too much in the ear, you would also, there's a risk for especially fungal infections in the ear. So, but it's not within the FEI rules prohibited at all. But I believe in Germany, you would have in Sweden certainly, maybe also Switzerland, would have legislation against clipping certain parts of hair in the head of the horse. Yes. I know, Klaus, you have a good voice, but let's wait for the microphone, please.
The question period of the event. You brought the example with Oliva. Oliva starts 3 days with the young horses from Tuesday to Wednesday, and the older horses start on Thursday. The period of the event started then on Tuesday when they arrive, or started for the older horses so that you can clip on Monday, and then they start on Thursday and it's okay, or you say the whole week is the period?
So you mean that you have the event for the younger horses, that would be one FEI event, wouldn't it? I'm looking at, it depends. Okay, we'll look into that. It's an interesting question when you have these, if you have different age categories. But my understanding is that you would have different events. You have for young horses and then you would have for older horses, and they are separate events. If that's the case, Stefan.
First of all, the one schedule can have different events, different categories. And then for me, it would depend a little bit on the date of the horse inspection. So if there is only one horse inspection and the horse inspection is on Tuesday for all the horses, then for me that's the point where the event starts.
Yes.
If there are, in the one schedule, different categories, and there is a new horse inspection on Wednesday for the whatever horses, then this would be for me the time where that event starts. I guess that could be an indication where an event starts if it's in one schedule with different categories.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's very good advice. Thank you. Anything else before I proceed? No. Stefan.
I know that this is on the slide, but just for clarification, because it's not 100% clear in the rules, you said that, and as I say, it is on the slide, but just once again, the definition limb and lower leg, because the rules are just talking about limbs, and we constantly have discussions with riders and with grooms, so what is now really the limb, what is the lower leg, because even the definition lower leg would not really fit it. On the slide here, there is an explanation, but just that we point out that this is what we want.
We have discussed to put that clarification into the rules for 2021. Just add the word lower. Okay. Horse inspection panel. On request from the jumping committee and jumping department, we had, in regards of this panel, for it's unchanged for the vets, but for the ground jury members, it must be president of ground jury and foreign judge. And if you wish any further clarification on that, please ask Stefan. I'm sure he will be very happy to explain the background and clarify.
Before you even ask, I might make the one or other sentence about that. You will all have that situation that you have discussions with organizing committees, who should be there for the horse inspection and who should not be there, and this and that and the other. For us, it's absolutely important that the ground jury president, who in the end makes the decision, and as well the foreign judge who is there on behalf of FEI and has to check if everything is done according to the rules, that they are present at the horse inspection. In the old edition of the rules, it was that 2 members of the ground jury had to be there, and then some organizing committees were so clever and said, oh, we take the 2 people from the neighborhood, because that avoids another night in the hotel or something. I can understand that from the organizing point of view, or organizer's point of view. However, I guess you will all agree that the people who have to make the decision later on if a horse can compete or not and have to have the final decision, they should be there for the first horse inspection. And on top of that, I simply can't see that I can really make a decision on a horse which hasn't passed the first horse inspection if I haven't seen it when it comes back for the re-inspection. So how can I compare what the situation is now? So for that reason, it's clearly written in the rule that it is the president of the ground jury and the foreign judge who have to be there. However, there is always a however part. I am aware that there are low event categories where there is no foreign judge. So then it has to be just another member of the ground jury, because in this case, the ground jury president at the same time would be the foreign judge. Then it needs a second member. I guess that is common sense. The second thing is, if for what reason ever one of these 2 people should not arrive early enough, then this is not a reason to say, oh, now we can't have a horse inspection because the foreign judge had it booked on a plane and they are on strike or whatsoever. So this is the general rule. In practice, there might be unforeseen circumstances which would make it necessary that somebody else comes in. But we are not talking about things that the organizer said, no, you are the foreign judge, we do not want to have you here before the first competition. Please insist that you come earlier. If you are the foreign judge or the president, take into consideration that you have to be there and not, oh, I'm coming on Saturday or something. Yeah? So this is part of it. And please consider that when you accept invitations. If you can't come already on Tuesday, then you have to tell the organizer, okay, I'm happy to come as a member, but I can't be the president of the event. This is not unforeseen. If there is a special thing or you are sick the day before, not a problem. Then you see that there is a substitution coming in. But if you know that in advance that you can't be there for the whole period of the show, then please do not accept and just come as a member. Any other further questions on that? Then I make another last sentence on it. Please be so kind, because we all have to get used to the rules. If you get an invitation, inform the organizing committee about that and say, as you might have heard or as you will have heard, there is a new rule on that. Please be so kind and make clear that the foreign judge comes early enough, that the travel arrangements will be made accordingly, and so on, to avoid any problems there. Any questions? Otherwise, back to Goran.
Thank you for that clarification, Stefan. I'm now moving over to an old favorite, pony measuring. I honestly, on one occasion, tried to move away pony competitions from the FEI and shove it over to the EF. It was not very well received by the board at all. I will never do that mistake again. So what we've done instead is we are completely changing the pony measuring system. And the main reason for that is to eventually get away from measuring at events. And the reason for that is that it's very traumatic for the kids, it's very frustrating for vets and stewards, and it's, to quote the legal department, it eats their resources, all the appeals and legal processes afterwards, where we win, I would say, 95% of them. But it still takes crazy resources, the old system. So we're introducing something new now, and we're looking much forward to that. So this means that by 1st of January this year, all new pony registration will have to be measured at an official FEI measuring session, and that's out of competition. Measured ponies will receive an FEI measuring certificate according to their age. If they're 8 years or older, they will receive a lifetime certificate that will follow them throughout their life. Younger ones will get a 1-year certificate, and eventually, when they reach 8, they will have the opportunity to get an 8-year, a lifetime certificate. So, we also put in place grandfather rights for those ponies that during 2017, 18, and 19, these are the years where we really feel that we were in control of the measurement in regards of improved surfaces, improved protocols, improved reporting, and so on. Those that measured in during these 3 years, they will receive an FEI lifetime measuring certificate. They will be grandfathered in. Those that appealed and did measure out, they must go through the new system if they think they or have the ambition to become a pony again, because they are not registered as ponies now. They're registered as horses, and some I know compete very successfully as horses as well. There's a transition period starting 1st of January this year and ongoing throughout 21 and 22, and we will measure those that doesn't have a measure certificate at 3 jumping events. Those are the ones relevant for you, and that's the Europeans, the Pony Nations Cup final, and the Pony Jumping Trophy final. Please also be aware, those of you that don't come from groups 1 and 2 or EF, United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and so on, some countries have their own measuring system. We have already approved the use of the Australian system and the use of the American system because they meet our requirements. But if you would get any ponies from those countries coming in wanting to compete at an event within Europe, they would need to go through the European system. That's for fairness. Those that measure in at these events where we measure, they will also get a certificate according to their age. So they have a good chance going there now. From 1st of January 2023, it's full implementation. There will be no measuring at FEI events, and everyone will need a certificate in order to enter an event. We have started to check all the new registrations from 1st of January to see that they are not trying to enter an event without having a certificate. And we actually found one yesterday that slipped through the system. We assume it's a bureaucratic mistake by the National Federation, because it's the NFs doing this, but we will continue to follow up on that, and we will automatically block them. So as soon as they are registered, they will be blocked, and then we will unblock them. For you as officials, especially you that would officiate as ground jury members, we would like you, as it is now the old rules still apply during the transition period for many of these ponies. And you will find those in Annex 9 in the vet regs. In Chapter 8 of that, 1 and 2, it says that ground jury or vet delegate are to report in writing, and note that, in writing. But in writing, an email is fine. A WhatsApp message is also in writing. A text message is also in writing. But don't do it on the phone. We need some record of it. And within 72 hours after the completion of the event, you need to write to my department any pony that you think is too big. If you see something that is obvious, please do that, because it's so unfair to those that go through the system properly if these huge ones are to continue competing. And especially in jumping, they can actually benefit from it, depending on the course designers. So it's really important that you do that. So please don't hesitate to contact us. The same thing applies for any doubtfulness in regards of withers. We are aware that withers have been manipulated surgically or with more, how should I put it, less sophisticated methods to make a horse to a pony. Any sign of that, send it to us. We will investigate it thoroughly. We will send it to veterinary examination. We will check X-rays and so on. And if that has happened, it will be a very thorough investigation, and it can be severe sanctions to anyone that has been part of such a practice. It's very severe what's happening in that regard. So the same thing applies. Within 72 hours, write to us. Questions on pony measuring? Yes, Francis.
Thank you. I'm looking at the measuring rules now, and it mentions that national federations must guarantee that 3 stewards will be present. I presume those do not have to be FEI stewards, they just have to be people who are chaperoning, monitoring, whatever the ponies?
We are requesting that at least one ideally should be an FEI steward. That's the requirement we have. But they need to have some sort of official function within an NF, so they know how to herd ponies and the surrounding people, which can be quite a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you. Now I come to something very serious. And we have a new rule in place. It's really sad that we need to have this rule, because really everyone should be, as a rider, trainer, manager, should be really careful with sending horses from stables where they had problems with herpes virus. And it's a relatively common infection in the upper airways. You see relatively many abortion cases, as well. But increasingly, we in Europe and in North America especially are seeing a mutation of that virus, and it causes a neurological disease that can be lethal. Those of you British I'm sure you're aware that very recently, just a couple of weeks ago, there was a very tragic event in Hampshire, I believe, an organizing at a national event. There were an outbreak, and 4 horses are now dead due to this outbreak. The worst one that we are aware that is connected to any sort of horse competition happened in United States, I believe in 2011. As far as I recall, I think 28 horses died in many states, because it's not just what happens at the event, it's also what happens afterwards when the horses go home and what they continue to spread. One of the best French eventers, also a breeding stallion, he will no longer compete on the 3-4 star level, if he ever can compete in eventing ever again, due to this disease, because it's not just a disease that will affect you, you will heal. It could have lifetime implications. Herpes virus for horses, as well as for humans, it stays, and stress can cause that it blows up again. So we have this new rule now, and there's a reason why we have it. We had actually 2 events last year, and I'm going to speak more about those. We had massive problems in dealing with it afterwards, because riders went to one of the tours having been so-called in-contact horses, meaning that they were at risk for having been contaminated, infected with this virus. And they went without taking good measures down to one of the tours, and there was a risk for 600 other horses. We needed a tool, and when we explained the situation, the board supported us very strongly, and also the General Assembly. There were no discussions whatsoever. We're going to be really careful when we use this tool. So what it's about then, that horse showing clinical signs of neurological EHV, or horses that are considered in contact. I will come to what is really in contact. So it's good for you to know. So it's not like all the horses in a big barn, on a venue, if the stables are separated. It's the horses that could be in that barn or the closest nearby, in the close nearby ales and so on. But such horses, they will not be allowed access to FEI events by the veterinary delegate and the veterinary commission or veterinary commission and the ground jury. So you guys are involved in this. And we had recent issues with horses, because one of the outbreaks actually happened here in Prague. It was actually one case. We identified 29 in-contact horses from that, and that's not much, and the reason why it wasn't more than 29 is that the stables were really well separated here, and good hygiene procedures were applied. So it was quite easy to just keep it down to 29. A disease like influenza, you would have a much wider spread. You would expect more or less all horses, if let's say they were unvaccinated, to be at risk. With herpes virus, we're talking longer time that they need to be exposed, and on much closer range, like 5 meters. And then, of course, the big risk is people dealing with it. So think about that. If you're ever dealing with a horse, with a nostril, with a mouth, and so on. And I know some of you, I'm looking at 2 of them that has very gracefully helped us with the hypersensitivity testing this year. you know, with the vets, all the measures they take to avoid that spreading microorganisms from horse to horse. And especially with this disease, it's so important. This is a complete showstopper, a complete showstopper. So be careful with this. So what we can do from 1st of January is that as soon as we learn about a case, we will decide very carefully which horses are in contact horses. And you can help with that when you plan your horse inspections. If you, for example, as was here in Prague, the 5-star horse inspections was clearly separated from the 2-star horses. That helps. If it would have been mixed, and try to keep these separations not just in regards of place, but also in time, as much as you can. Because if you have an outbreak, you will limit it. You will limit it, and it was done very well here, the way it was set up. So think about that. So after we have identified in-contact horses, and of course the ones that are really sick, we will decide what they need to do. We're right now liaising with the leading experts in the world exactly on how to set it, but it's probably going to be, if they don't do anything, it's 28 days, and they need to show temp list, and they need to have a vet that's in charge to check on these horses now and then. But they can half that time by taking double samples, one quite early and then one at 14 days to check at, we look at virus in the actual virus in the blood, but we also look at antibodies. And then we will release them. Hopefully we will not have to use this very often, but to be honest, I think this is underreported a lot. I'm quite certain it is. So this will save horse lives if you help us with this. So please do that. Going from here to something else that is very closely connected. FEI stables. And now we can relate to what the International Jumping Riders Club also were talking about. We have a lot of issues with stable security, with cleanliness of stables and so on. What you will see now is something that I presented for the heads meeting at FEI a few weeks ago. I presented it to others, and we have decided that now it's time to take further actions than we already have done, and really focus on this during these upcoming 2 years. The current situation, fatalities, safe stables, biosecurity, stable security, and all the activities that we need to do. So in 2019, 2 horses caught EHV, neurological disease, at 2 FEI events. One was in Norway and one was in Prague. And I really would like to express my gratitude to those that, from the ground juries. It wasn't the vets reporting it, actually. The vets cooperated very well, but the reports came from ground juries. And that is hugely appreciated. We also had 2 fatalities related to stables. We have a fact that in almost every anti-doping and controlled medication case, the PRs will blame contamination. Sometimes they have a point, quite often they don't. But just the fact that they have that they can show that the stables were not clean, that stable security was not the way it should be, is bad enough, because it complicates the cases. It makes the cases extremely much more difficult and expensive for all parties. And it's a shame that they should even have to feel like that. We had poor stable security reported, not just in relation to these cases, but also from vets, from other officials, from chefs de missions, and ourselves when we have traveled around to check up on this matter. And another thing is that examination on arrival is not carried out according to the rules, if at all. If at all. And it's the most useful tool that we have to prevent EHV cases at FEI events. So looking at this, I hope this is quite a nasty picture. It's not from an FEI event. You see a horse being stuck in between parts of boxes. And as a vet, and I also worked for the Swedish government writing legislation on such matters. I've been lecturing and teaching veterinarians and animal welfare inspectors on these matters. So I have quite an experience on stable environment and the safety of it. So from 2014 and up to 2019, we had 5 that are dead. That clearly is the only reason for that they are dead is because of the stables. You can clearly say that. We don't know exactly what happened with the stable, what was wrong with the stable. The post-mortem exam doesn't say that. I believe we need to do some sort of a crash investigation after these, so we actually know what's wrong, so we can identify dangerous equipments that sometimes are traveling all over a continent as rental stables. Some are really good. Some used to be good, but they are no longer because they are old and worn out. And there's a lot of things that we're going to look deeper into. We also have this part with the indemnity, with the legal issues related to this. Imagine there's actually a legal case ongoing now against one of the Nations Cup organizing committees. It's one of the fatalities. That's no secret to anyone in here. And there could be more coming. I would not be surprised if that happens, because more or less everything seems to go to legal procedures nowadays. So what kind of reasons could we have? And please be ensured that this is nothing to do with the ongoing legal case that we're having right now. None of these pictures have anything to do with that. So the first one, I will tell you the brands of that equipment is Chevrolet Liberté stables. I took these pictures in France at a very major, very exclusive event, and they were using, you see this fancy pink padding here. I don't know what they thought, but this space here is just ideal for a horse to stick his head out, turn the head, then get stuck. It's a very dangerous situation. And for some reason, this has broken, and I can tell you why. It's too weak. They actually try to establish these boxes. It's the ones that you actually lift them up like, and they fold out very nicely. So they're super easy to set up, and they're easy to take down. They're fairly easy to clean and so on, which is great, but they're too weak. They are too weak. And when I worked for the Swedish government, I was at a very major event, and I was the government inspector there. I said, sorry, you can't use this. You cannot ever take this back. So we locked down large part of the stables. We had to stitch 3 horses because they had cuts due to this part. And these we would probably never know at the vet department now if that happens. These minor injuries that the horse could be allowed to compete and so on, we would probably never know about it. But they do happen. I can imagine that the horse that made this, there could very well have been an injury related to it. The next one is just old equipment. This is permanent stables, but it's rust. So if you put your shoulder or you kick it hard, it will break, and then you have this pin can really go in any direction to the neighboring horse or into the horse that's in that situation or in that box or out to someone outside. Here you have poor welding, also really dangerous. This is actually from a very major event with what I believe otherwise to be a quite good equipment that I see few problems with. It's easy to clean, but you see this pin here, can you see it? There's a hole. The pin should be in that hole and it's not. This means that the box is not properly put together and it becomes unstable. That's one thing with it. The other thing with it, these needs to be put together in blocks, otherwise they will just be wobbly. I'm guessing now, but I would assume they need at least 4. 2 is not enough. And this is actually a testing box at an event, and they were set up 2 by 2, and I could move them quite easily with my hip. Imagine the situation if a horse starts moving around there and get panic. And I know that has happened, not necessarily with these boxes, but with other boxes that are supposed to be set up in blocks. So other reasons for problems are weak and dangerous constructions. Here you see a solution that it's really easy to set up. I can imagine that it's quite easy to construct, but it's dangerous because you have sharp bolts here, and there's no way you can maintain any kind of biosecurity here. You cannot, if one horse would have received any medication, the risk that the neighboring horse also would get contaminated by it, I would say is fairly big. The good thing, though, I don't think a horse can get stuck in these because they will just break apart, as you've seen here. On the far right, you see Chevrolet Liberté boxes again. The mechanism that is used to lift it up, to spread it out, has actually some very dangerous traps where horses can get stuck with heads or their legs. So watch out for these. Any questions on constructions? Comments? You will have seen a lot of this. I'm looking at some very experienced people that I know well, and I see that they confirm it. They've seen a lot of this. And is there anything that special that you maybe don't want to raise here, but you've seen particular problems with certain types of boxes? Let us know, because we will look into it. Stefan?
Yeah, I just wanted to make exactly the same remark. If you are in a situation that you see these boxes at a show where you are, you have to do 2 things. The first thing is most likely for the year when you are there, you have to pray that nothing is happening because you can't change that during the event. No. If it comes that there is a borderline, if it is really too dangerous, then most likely we have to see what we can do then last minute. But with these borderline things, there is not so much you can do at that time. But please do us one favor, because we as FEI, we can only react if we know about that. So please put that in your reports. We also encourage riders to do that, because it has a certain effect if you also find something about this in the riders' reports. And it happened to me at least several times that I was at a show where I had to put something in my foreign judge's report, and unfortunately I couldn't find a word in the rider reports. So it only helps if we are all really fighting for that. And if we then know this as FEI, we can take care, at least for the years to come, that the situation will be improved, because otherwise we might come to the conclusion that we do not approve the schedule if we know that it is not working. But we have to know, so the only way that we know is that you let us know. So please put it in the reports, let us know.
Thank you, Stefan. That's, yes, Klaus. I will come to that. Thank you. Perfectly right.
Joran, if I may?
Oh, Francis, yes.
I'm just wondering if statistically you have any information on what type of stabling you actually see, because we see wooden stables, we see the soft plastic ones, we see the very, very hard plastic ones, and there are so many different types of stabling that are used, and I can see pros and cons for each one.
Indeed. We don't, but I think certainly it's something that we need to look into. We have discussed various projects around this and looking at stable constructions, and we will come to some. It's very difficult to get a grip of because we have now 137 member nations, although an absolute majority of events with rental stables or temporary stables are in North America and in Europe. In some countries, they don't exist for hire whatsoever. In very many countries, that's the case. But there's plenty to do also in regards of the permanent stables, which I will show you now. The cleanliness of stables. This is actually, I've taken these pictures myself. This is not jumping, this is eventing, but a very major event. And these are boxes that are prepared and marked up to welcome riders coming in. And as you see, it's totally unacceptable. And it's something that you absolutely must support the riders, because this is partly about biosecurity, but especially with the permanent stables, you could have had a sick horse standing there for 2 weeks being treated for laminitis with flunixin, and flunixin stays forever in the environment almost. You need a very, very thorough cleaning up after use of flunixin because it's so stable in the environment. Other substances will disappear quickly, but it's something that this is really important that we help the riders with, and you can help out with that. Yes, Willem.
These topics about stable security are also concerning the organizers. Isn't there something in developed as a kind of minimum criteria?
So I will come to that in the actions, and also I met Peter Bollen, who is the president of the event organizers club. I met with him yesterday, very, very briefly, but we agreed that we will get in touch soon on this topic. It's really important that they are on board on this. For them, it's not just a matter of delivering and making this happening. It's also a matter of protecting themselves, because someone that has had their horse injured, as we see in our case, but also if stable security hasn't worked out, if the cleanliness is unacceptable, it's just a matter of time before legal cases will be raised against committees as well, organizing committees as well. So it's a way for them to protect themselves, and I think that's really important for everyone to understand. It's about protecting the sport. We're all in this, and we need to help each other. And Peter was more than happy for me to raise it, so I'm looking forward to that cooperation. Here we go. You got electricity. This is not, sometimes it's the OC's issue, but quite often it's actually the PR's own solutions. I remember when our family, we were living at Sweden's largest private venue, many arenas, about 250 permanent stables and so on. And every year we would have a big pony event in the winter. And then they would come from all over and also from countries further south of us. There would be snow, there would be ice. So in order to walk from the stables down to the inner arenas, the horses would have studs. And they were freezing in their caravans, they were freezing in their horse trucks, and they had forgot to pay to pre-order electricity and so on. So they were having these cords all over the place. And I was running like a madman trying to protect the lives of kids and ponies, ripping out this, having very upset parents coming out shouting because the TV didn't work anymore because it took away their electricity. So that's a reality. And you can also have a problem. This is actually from Fontainebleau, this one. Oh, sorry, I'll go back. This is from Fontainebleau. It was really hot. The OC hadn't done anything wrong, but everyone was really concerned that it was so warm and they needed electricity everywhere. To set up these fans, you wouldn't see this normally, at least I haven't seen it at a 5-star, 4-star jumping event with professional FEI riders. You see it where the kids are, where the juniors are, where the parents are, where the unexperienced people. They would make these own solutions. They go to the nearest hardware store and they buy whatever they can do to cool their horses down. And they end up setting it up with the various things. And this is fairly, at least they tried to keep the electricity away from the horse. But it's not an easy one. Here's another one. Someone with a stallion, and they're unhappy with their stallion climbing on the walls, which I can understand. So they put one of these machines for fencing, electrical machines for fencing. I don't know the right word in English. Francis can help me afterwards. Yeah, electric fencing machine. And at least here they had isolated clips where they put the wire on top around. I've seen cases where the wire, where the clips are not isolated, which means that the entire metal structure of the box is electrified. So it's shocking, it is. This is my favorite though, on the far right. Here you have a fuse box. They open it because, of course, they need a coffee machine. And there's actually, and here you have a cord down, you have dry hay here, and then you have a coffee machine standing over here. I didn't take it there, but it was a nice coffee machine though. This is a very major risk of fire. And we started looking a lot into preparedness for fire emergencies after the Liverpool fire a few years back. And seeing something like this at a very high level event where many of the best horses in the world was in sight early last year was just appalling, shocking. I started looking around after fire extinguishers, signs where to go with the horses if there was a fire. I wanted to know if the guards, the security staff knew what to do with the horses. No one had a clue. There were fire extinguishers, but none of them were marked up. And I think this is what we quite often see. And this you must be alert on, and our vets must be alert on it, because this could save lives. I could go on forever about things like this, but I choose to show some good examples with the risk of being accused of being nationalistic now. This is from Gothenburg Horse Show last year. You see here we had some extra biosecurity measures. You have the disinfection gel. You have also the fire extinguishers. They are marked up. You have extra halters, and you have leads to them, and you have escape routes and everything carefully set up. And this was the case for each and every stable. And that's the way it should be everywhere, with no exceptions ever. And I believe that as stewards, this is part of your job to make sure this happens. And it's also part of my veterinary delegate to make sure that it happens. But both of you will arrive quite late, and that you stand ahead of something that already happened, more or less. So the actions that we're gonna do will have to be in advance of your arrival. They will have to be focused on that in order to be properly prepared. So we are following on Willem's question. We will now produce standards and/or guidelines, depending on issue, for cleanliness of stables. We will not be looking for like a surgery room cleanliness. It needs to be equivalent to that of a hotel room when you check in. A nice hotel room. It's clean. You have new sheets. The toilet, the basin, everything is wiped off properly. But they haven't smoked it for 2 days with some disinfectant agent. That's not what we're talking about. Just properly cleaned. Decent. I think everyone could achieve that. We did that through national legislation in Sweden about 12 years ago. I wrote that legislation and launched it. I was, among some of the organizing committees, I was probably the most hated person for a couple of years. But in the end, it worked out quite well. So at most events there, it works. FEI needs to be more precise in this. We will also set up standard guidelines for safe stables and provide checklists. I think those checklists can be shared with the stewards, definitely with the veterinary delegates. We will also, starting this year, introduce a veterinary services manager education online. And from 2021, we will require that in order to be a veterinary services manager, you need to have passed that exam online. And it will be very, very hands-on information. Okay, it's an online education. How can that ever be hands-on? But it's about being very practical. What do you need to actually ensure that is in place in regards of fire extinguishers, the boxes? Have you checked that the pins are in the holes where they should be, and so on? Very practical. And with that, the vet services managers hopefully will do their job properly. So when you arrive as chief stewards, when the vet delegates arrive and you're there to inspect, everything will be in order and it's not too late. That is what we want to achieve. It's not going to be that easy. We all know that. But we need to start walking in the right direction. We will also target the education of the vet delegates, and I would hope that the sports discipline would accept that we also introduce this into the stewards' education with these checklists and what you actually need to look at. What is dangerous, what is okay, what is not okay. A campaign for proper reporting. Most of these things, I've taken these pictures myself. And do you think anything of this has been reported by the vet delegate in the vet report? No. Never of any of these pictures. And we're starting to follow up on that. And we're going to use, we're going to be very proactive. We're going to push for it, campaign, but we will also sanction those that apparently have not reported things to us. And that will start already next week with a couple of vets that's done quite major mistakes. So I think that's the only way to reach any progress on this. I mentioned the new rules for in contact of EHV neurological disease. We planned last year to launch a new clean sport education on campus, but my colleague had to leave for quite a few months, so we're behind, but this will be picked up shortly so we can launch this video. And it's directed to the riders especially, but I think all of you can also learn something from that video. It has a lot to do with contamination, how to minimize the risks, really. I have an approval that we can produce a video on safe and clean stables that is related to these standards that I mentioned. We need to become better in the interaction between the FAI departments on these matters. We have a lot of interactions, but on these matters, we need to take the lead and really chase for this information. When you report something on anything like this, we must be absolutely sure that it reaches us so we can do something about it. And we have received now a green light to actually contact non-compliant OCs directly. We have previously gone through the sports department, but on these kind of matters, it will be copied in and we will contact them directly, and we have hired an extra veterinarian to work with this, who's used to working with control systems, checklists and things like that. So I hope all these things together and with your support will make these important matters much, much better within a couple of years. Questions on that? Well, thank you. Yes. I think we have questions up here. We have plenty of time now to ask. But let's start with this presentation. Then feel free to ask any veterinary matters.
I want to ask about the... Oh, Angel Goran from Greece. Okay. I want to ask about the EHV. What is the state of the vaccines? Because wherever we see, they say there's no one that's...
Yeah. So, in regards of vaccines for the respiratory disease and for abortion, they protect fairly all right. But for neurological disease, there's no protection for the individual horse. But you can lower the total infection pressure by having the whole group of horses vaccinated. That's what they're trying to achieve now in the United States. And in France, in regards of racing and trotting, they have done that. But as long you more or less need all horses to be vaccinated. You see that you will have a lower number of outbreaks if you do that. But right now, there's no vaccine specifically for the neurological disease.
Yeah, okay. That vaccine has to be done like for the other, but you have to have a first, second, third. Okay, because I was last year in a show in France on a racetrack, and horses had to be vaccinated.
Yeah.
But how can you vaccinate a horse? How can you be sure he's vaccinated if he's not vaccinated and then 3 months before he has, or 1 month before he enters the, he goes for that show?
No, it's really, really difficult, and it's, so there's two things to that. One, that's as a safety measure, because you can really never know for certain. And so-called pen vaccinations exist. They are not true vaccinations. They've been done with a pen in the passport, but not in the horse.
Yeah.
Let's face it. That's one thing. And then we have the fact with herpes virus that we know is a common virus, but not very common in regards to neurological disease, but we need anyway to be careful, and the best way is to temp the horses before they arrive into the venue and have a proper examination arrival that doesn't happen in the way it should. The other thing that we're doing now, but that's for influenza, and that is during next year or early 2021, we will launch a system, an electronic registration of vaccination that is almost impossible to cheat with, because the vet needs to stand by the horse doing it using microchip, Bluetooth, smartphone, facial recognition, fingerprint, scan the vaccine barcode, put it in the horse. And the reason why we're doing this is, of course, that we want the horses to be vaccinated properly. That's one thing. But by doing this, the European Commission, when they put in a new law now from 21st of April 2021, they will allow a high health status of horses if they go through this system. And that means that instead of the 10-day a horse can move around now on an attestation, they will be able to travel 30 days on a certificate. So, and easier across the borders. So we're getting something for it. So it will be worthwhile for the riders and for the vets. Some vets, I'm sure, will complain. And for you guys, it will be quite easy, because this can also be used, and some of you have seen it in Gothenburg when we tested it at the World Cup finals. You just scan the horse and you get the diagram up, all the passport information, everything on the horse, right in your phone like this, or your laptop. But you can trade, yes?
Thank you, Jan Stevens from Canada. You did mention that there is not always compliance with the rule of that the horses be inspected by the veterinarians before they go into the stables. Is there any appetite or any way of getting the organizing committees to coordinate that in a better way, the arrival of the horses and the arrival of the veterinarians?
Yes. One of the reasons why we're pushing for this VSM part, that the VSMs must be properly educated from 2021, that's one part of it. The other one is that we're going to use this electronic system, so the horses will need to be checked in, and we will see who has checked it in. And it will need to be a veterinarian there with their fingerprint or their face in their phone with a microchip reader and check the horse in. And if they're not there, the horse is not logged in at the event. So that's what we're doing.
And so that is going to help us greatly in the future. For now, what would your expectation be, say, regarding the temperature charts and time of arrival of those horses?
Are you talking EHV or in general?
In general.
So temperature charts, I think, is a good thing, and we applied it for the World Cup finals. I know they did a similar thing in Denmark a couple of weeks later for their, I think, dressage World Cup qualifier. And it's something that it's certainly helpful, but it's not 100% proof. It doesn't take away the taking the temp on arrival. I think that's first thing to say. But it gives awareness, and I would say it decreases the risks, but it doesn't take them away. There's new technology around. One that we are preparing this app to work with, and it's a patch that you put under the tail of the horse. Is already used by racing all the horses going from New Zealand and Australia into Hong Kong Jockey Club. They are using this patch, and it's connected to the microchip and ID of the horse, and it's Bluetooth. So you get a full reading throughout the entire transport of the horse with a temp curve. So you can see here you got a stressed horse. Right, this is interesting. Here you got a pattern that would indicate influenza or herpes or a bacterial infection or something like that. You can really follow that, and it's already in place, and we're preparing it. But We're not requiring it. There's also microchips that are very, very technical. They've been more than 10 years. There's been microchips with temp reading capacity, but they also need to meet our requirements and European Union legislation requirements. So there's quite a lot to look at that. And also in regard to microchips, it's really important to understand that you can clone microchips. So we need to have them really, really safe and stable, so they cannot be changed. Identity of, let's say, this has been a lot of discussions on within the Irish Federation, I know, having the right identity of grey horses, and also within endurance. So it's something that we're looking at, and we also have raised very clearly with the European Commission. They actually were close to moving into just using microchips for identification. Some member countries really pushed for it, and we explained the situation with the risk with that, and they backed down from it. So it's, you will always need the diagram of the horse. You need something to cross-check the microchip with. Yes, Klaus? Okay, Francis. Yes. Sorry.
It's okay, no worries. Dogs. Yeah, the issue with dogs is that they're part of the groom's families.
Yeah.
And their company when they're driving and everything.
Yeah.
And they're very reluctant to change their ways with their dogs, and I completely understand that.
So I can just relate to the big outbreak. I believe it was either in Utah, Colorado, at a quarter horse show, where I think 28 horses eventually died. One of the things they were looking into were dogs running around between boxes, horses, horse feed, and so on, possibly spreading things. I think they ended up looking at the water throws more than anything else, but it's clearly something. When you're investigating an outbreak, I've done a lot of those kind of investigation when I worked for trotting and for the Swedish government. And dogs, cats, birds, you certainly look at that part, how they could spread disease. And dogs are a risk, and they should be on leash, period. So I know it's not popular, but it's necessary. Also in regards to contamination. We actually had an issue quite recently with testing where our staff, not our staff, our officials kept dogs in boxes, in testing boxes, and tried to reassure riders that this was perfect all right because it was their dog and they knew it was clean. Come on, get real. You can't do that. And I don't think it ever will happen again. But dogs, I think, are underestimated in that regard. So we need to push for that. Yes, Stefan.
I think maybe it would be a useful way to communicate this if actually there was some information for us to be able to say, you know, this has happened with dogs running loose in the stables, that has happened. If there was more education about that for the grooms as well, and for the riders, because it's their dogs as well.
We can put it into the clean sport education, certainly.
I think that this is really extremely important that we do something there, because I just tested that some month ago. I was at a show and I wanted to take a picture of a dog in the stables. And it took me 5 minutes and I had 10 pictures of 10 different dogs. So that was not really challenging. That was very easy to get that picture. Goran, you just said that the risk is really underestimated with dogs. Every time we have meetings with the Jumping Riders Club, which are always very important to us, this is on the agenda, and the riders are always mentioning that contamination part and all these things, and dogs are always part of the discussion. And of course, we then always say, yeah, but maybe you can also contribute a little bit to that, because the dogs are the dogs of your employees and not necessarily the dogs from the officials. So it's a little difficult. And then, of course, the argument comes up what Francis makes. They are part of the family, and it's extremely difficult. If this is really that difficult, I do not know. I know at least one show where they are very strict with dogs, and you will not find a single dog at the show. It works. If organizers want it, if we all work together, then we can do something. But I guess the first step is really we have to make it clear that this is really risky for lots of reasons, and we all have to work together with that. If you try to fight against dogs in the stables, you get lost right from the very first moment. But obviously we have to point out how important this is, that people reconsider if you bring all your family members to the show.
Okay. Klaus?
I have the question with the organizing committee that are not always happy with the rules from opening of the stables to the first horse inspection. Because sometimes the horse and riders are on a tour, so they won't enter on Tuesday. First horse inspection is on Thursday afternoon. And so the OC is not happy that there must be a vet and a steward for guarding everything. And I think also it's not really clear in the rules. Also, on one point is the medical service from the opening of the stables. It's sometimes really difficult to talk to the OC that the medical service must be also there from the opening of the stables. So this is maybe a point that should be a little bit more officiate in the shell or from the FEI to the OC that they have to do this.
This is clearly one of the reasons why we started to ourselves go out and visit events unannounced, more or less, because we received more and more information that what you're saying was the fact that too many events, and it was actually worse than I anticipated when I got out. And it's something that this whole package, we're even looking into a part where we believe that at least the veterinary delegate, of course, first you need the VSM education so they have a chance to actually do it properly. We need to adapt and modernize some of the things that we do so we can do it more efficiently. We need to risk assess again in regards of the new threats of certain diseases, the increase of neurological herpes virus, for example. That's one thing. But most importantly, something that we have raised now for many years, that is veterinary delegates are appointed and paid by the FEI centrally. And that will give us proper reporting. We see the reports we receive from our testing vets, our pony measuring vets, our limb sensitivity vets that we appoint, that we pay. It's on a completely different level. So we need to get there. Before we get there, I think we can make a lot of improvements, but we will not reach all the way. Okay. Yeah.
Kari Alassola, Estonia. We have still 5 minutes, so
good.
One question. In the foreign judges report, there's a question. Were the boxes disinfected? Yes or no? How to be sure that when I ask the organizer about this, every time the answer will be yes. How can I be sure about that?
So what we could do from our part, and what we did with Gothenburg, we asked the OC in Gothenburg, okay, how are you going to disinfect these boxes to make sure they are okay? We'll order that, and I'll show you the invoice that they're sending us. And then what I did myself was to just walk around and check how things were, and they were mainly very, very good. So one thing you could do is actually ask for some sort of attestation that is done, and I think that is something in the guidelines that we can request, that we put that into to these standards, that they need some sort of evidence that is done, and it's not that difficult. It will certainly mean more increased cost for the OCs. You can't get away from that. But on the other hand, they also need to protect themselves from close down of an event and legal claims in regards of. Imagine what would happen. Your super valuable horse dies because it gets infected at an event. There was no examination on arrival. The stables are filthy. You can't prove that you have disinfected them. What's going to happen to you in court? You're going to lose all the way.
Yeah, I mean, when I tick the box, yes, and afterwards something happens, and it was found out that the reason was not, the box was not disinfected. It's my head which is also going to fall down. Mm-hmm. I don't like that. I have only one head.
You should keep it, but I suggest what you do, if they can't show you any evidence, you write that you have the, according to the organizing committee, they are disinfected. That's it. Then you protect yourself. And if they want to play around with that, it's sad, but it's on them, not on you.
Thank you.
Okay.
If I can make one short remark on the timetable, I have no idea. I guess we have already more than 3 horses, so we can't change the time allowed, but we are still not really happy with the time limit. So we were trying, for the whole event here, we try to avoid to make one mistake, to have too many presentations and too much time pressure. So there is not a problem at all, as long as you still have questions related to the veterinarian aspects. You really should ask them. And if we do the coffee break 15 minutes later, then we do it 50 minutes later, because Goran is one of the presenters who is only here today. So tomorrow there won't be another chance. So if you have veterinary questions, whatever they are, related to the presentation or at all, we are very happy to have the coffee 15 minutes later, and you still have the chance to ask the questions, because I guess it's very important, and it's good to have Goran here. And I just want to say that on a personal remark, I'm really happy that he is here, because he makes my life and also the life of the whole FEI very easy, because he is very approachable, he is very well informed, and if there is an issue, it really takes a phone call or a short email, and you will get the information from him or from his team. So take the opportunity and please ask the questions you like to ask, and we do the coffee 50 minutes later.
Thank you, Stefan. That was very kind.
Yeah, I have a question actually about the horse inspection. The horse goes to the holding box, then comes back and wants to trot up, re-inspect then.
Yep.
Can it then come back in the morning as well? I think it can by the rules, but I just want it clarified.
Could you please? I think it can by the rule, yes.
Yeah, so that clarifies it definitely can.
Yeah, I think so, yes. Let's have a look in the rules. I need to read them out, because I'm trying to keep all these articles in my head, and since I don't work with this horse inspection on not even annual basis, just through the rules more or less, I will need to check.
Okay,
but,
there is some confusion over that, so it'd be very helpful.
I know.
Thank you.
I know.
I've just got 2 questions. One is about the grooms having medication in the tack lockers. the treating vets going to the stables to treat horses, and the grooms handing them the medication. I've come across this twice in the past few months. And also, is there anything that you could do about vets who absolutely refuse to wear accreditation?
Start with the easy one. Vets refusing to wear accreditation. They must wear their accreditation. If they don't do that, report them, please. And if they will first time receive a warning letter, second time, at least a warning and most likely a suspension. If it happens the third time, I'd be more than happy to scratch them for a list for a longer time. On the other one, when it comes to storing medicines, because I know this is especially on the tours, this is something that's happening, and but it could be anywhere really. But I know certainly on the tours is something that vet delegates ask me about. And controlled medications, let me have a look into the rules, because it's not just the vet regs, we have the EAD CMRs. So I will review those, and I'd be happy to respond by email on that. And another thing on the EAD CMRs, they will be reviewed this year for implementation of 2021. So if there's anything that from your perspective as stewards you find complicated, you should bring that up. Take that from this meeting actually, through your board into the FEI, into the legal department, veterinary department, and we will be more than happy to look at it. Thank you. Right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Goran, for doing the presentation here. No, first. Okay. As you already mentioned, if you're at a competition, there are a lot of risks. And not all risks can be mitigated at the moment. But everything we have to do, it's all about the cooperation between the stakeholders. Stakeholders, the organizer, we as officials, the riders, the grooms, and the FEI. So it's very important to keep an open communication, and thank you for the invitation. If we have anything, we can bring it to you, but that's the way you are living, so you're accessible for that. We always give a present to our presenters, and we want to do it, this is a present which is sustainable, because that's the modern word nowadays, sustainable. And this is, when you travel a lot, you need energy and power.
Good.
And this is power for you, and this, the sun is always shining, although you can't see it always, but it's a solar power bank. Wow. Which you can use when you're traveling. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's a very nice gift. I'm going to Hong Kong, and hopefully there will be no smog there and use some sunshine. Thank you.
Okay. So normally we use the Friday pre-refresher to do case studies. This time we have decided, and Stefan also mentioned it, that we will give you the opportunity to ask more questions, to be free from the format of only doing the case studies. And so after the coffee break we will come back, and there is an opportunity to ask questions about jumping. You always want to have the answer, but we're afraid to ask, according to Woody Allen. So that's a big opportunity. Yes, and we will start that at 4:15. Yes?